it's time to go over everything we've been doing out at Westberrie Acres, give you an idea of what's been going on, all the different projects that we've been working on, some of them finished, some of them unfinished. So I guess we'll just start at the beginning and start at the entrance of the property and start moving that way as to what has changed so far. We do have our electrical in now. We don't have the electrical line from the pole to the well yet. Right. But that part, the rest of it is done. So that was put underground all the way up to the building site, and we do have the transformer up there now, so that's put into place. And I know a lot of people have asked about solar power, and I think in the future maybe that's something we will look at down the road. We obviously will have a large enough building, you know, roof space on there, but right now costs and everything, the way that it was going, and just because we need to have very consistent power for the shop and everything that we need to do out here, it was more economical for us to do the line from the pole.
It's best to put the line in now while we're digging everything up anyway and get it in there so that we can use it. That doesn't mean that solar is out of the question for us. It just means that it's part of the overall plan.
And the next thing we decided was, although we drilled a well, I think we decided that mainly that's going to be for irrigation purposes. We haven't done the exact test on it yet to figure out the water quality, but because it's so shallow, you know, all of this field drainage runs to that. Most likely, over time, we've figured this probably not going to be the greatest drinking water source. I mean, maybe it is. Maybe it's cleaner than we think it is.
I think it would be fine. I think the thing that turned us on our decision on that was, again, it was the same thing. Put in the utility while everything is dug up. We made it part of the plan so that we have the option here. That doesn't mean that well water won't be used for lots of things on our property. I mean, this is going to be a great source for keeping, like you said, irrigation, for my garden, for all of that kind of stuff. It's just we are very glad that we have the option to do rural water, and that is what our current plan is for the house.
So yeah, we decided to do the rural water. It was actually more affordable than we thought it was going to be. That was another reason why. So we also thought that we did not have rural water at our road. We thought it was a little ways down the gravel road, but it actually goes right underneath our driveway already. So that was another thing. It was hooking up to that was not as difficult as we anticipated. Right. That's going to need to be run up to the building yet. That's one thing that we do have to do in terms of tearing up this area yet, and we also do not have our internet in. So I guess we could talk about internet. That was another thing that everyone said to me, of course, that we do YouTube, and I do YouTube full-time, and everyone said, oh, you must have checked on the internet and everything before you bought the property. I said, no, actually I didn't, because I knew I had a cell phone, and that worked out here, and I was like, I'm just going to figure it out. I don't have much of a choice at this point.
Well, if you go back and you watch the video where we talked about purchasing the property and, you know, why we're moving out here, we didn't have time. In those kind of days when you're trying to buy a piece of property, you either, yes, let's sign on the line, and figure it all out later. Yeah. And so that's where we were. But
we actually found out shortly after we had decided to buy it that there was fiber at the road, and that's not a very common thing around here. No. We don't have fiber at our house in town. We don't even have the option of it. So that was very surprising, and we're excited to actually have better internet living out in the country than we do in town.
If you just jinxed us, you're in trouble.
Yeah, we don't know how it's going to be, I guess. We haven't hooked up to it yet. But everyone that had it around here, we actually knew a few people that had it and said it was good.
Yeah.
So that's going to be number one, is hopefully having better internet, and we do have good cell coverage out here.
Yeah, signal has been great. So we haven't had any issues with cell phone signal or anything. So we've kind of struck gold in that regard and gotten really lucky with that.
Yeah. So then I guess one of the interesting stories that we could tell is, remember that I talked about that pile of soil that was near this front tree here, and that had been there all of last season. I don't know, it was probably 4 feet deep, 5 feet deep, something like that, of topsoil. It looks like they had pushed a fence up into that area.
We were pulling out, I mean, feet of rusty barbed wire and cattle fencing, and it was just kind of an eyesore, and one of those projects where, you know, this is where you're going to turn into the property. This is the first thing that you're going to see. So there's a nice tree there, and it's got a beautiful shape, and we thought, let's just clean up this area, get all this metal out of here. So we started working on it.
Yeah, so we kept pulling barbed wire and pulling more and more. And as soon as we got farther into the pile, it just continued to show up. So we were pulling all of that out of there. And I was going through with the skid steer and finishing up, and I was about to take out the last couple buckets of soil and try to level everything out. And I saw a pile of fir. I thought to myself, that's kind of strange. Something died underneath there and the fur is still there. But as soon as I stopped and looked, I noticed there was a heartbeat and breath. I could see the lungs moving. So I was like, this is very, very strange. So I went and got Kelsey and we came over there, and it's actually a woodchuck or a groundhog, essentially. And it was hibernating and had been underneath this pile. I drove the skid steer 9,000 pounds right next to it, probably on top of it.
There were no burrows that we saw. They must have been covered. I have no idea.
Yeah.
There were no indications that something was living under there at all.
No. So, and it didn't even move. I went right next to it with the machine, did not move a bit. So we stopped and, didn't disturb it or anything. We watched for a while, and all of a sudden it started to kind of wake up and come to, like...
He was pretty out of it.
Yeah.
I was so nervous that, uncovering him, he was weak. He was coming out of hibernation. That he was going to end up being a coyote's meal or something like that. So
yeah.
It really felt terrible that it happened that way.
Yeah. So we left it alone, though. We're like, let's just, hopefully it goes back and burrows again or something. And we came back the next day, and there was a hole back into the pile that was still there. There was some straw put around the entrance. And as far as we know right now, it's still in there. So
right.
We don't know exactly when it's going to come out. I would like to know so I can finish this project. But we don't know at this point.
Right.
I would say next thing we've been dealing with is continuing to deal with the shipping container. So everyone knows it would have been way better had we known in the beginning to have a very flat, even rock pad
yes.
or cement pad or something. But that was not the case when we got the shipping container, and there wasn't a lot we could do about it. It was coming. We just had to put it down. So
you don't know what you don't know. That is the thing that we keep telling ourselves. There are so many things that we are learning in this process.
But I think what we're going to do now is eventually dig out these railroad ties that we put underneath the front, make sure those are fully leveled, and probably get some sort of rock underneath there, something that's going to not sink as quickly. We know that it will still settle over time. For the time being, we just need to get this thing the next 3-4 months, as soon as we have the building started where we can start storing things in there. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect long term, but right now the doors are starting to get to be kind of a pain again. Next thing would be, how did we solve this muddy mess around the shipping container?
What a mud mess.
So in the early winter time, as soon as things started to dry out, we didn't have a lot of snow this year anyway, but we would come out here and trying to get the Can-Am out of the container and drive it around, just mud city. So anyone who's lived on a property or out in the country probably knows that you deal with mud a lot, but we needed to fix something around
right.
here so that we could actually work and not be full of mud constantly.
Or get stuck. I mean, that was a true concern, was just getting the equipment stuck. And
our solution for that, Kelsey called around to a lot of different people and tried to figure out a solution on getting some wood chips for us. And the reason that we did that is because a lot of times tree companies are giving these away for free if you can find the right person who just wants somewhere to bring them and get rid of them. And also, it does a great job of just covering that muddy soil and being a solution that you can walk around on it and you don't track mud everywhere. So
right.
It's really nice.
There are definitely some things to work around with it. There's a lot of leveling work to do. But eventually these wood chips are going to settle in. They're going to get driven over. They're going to get packed down just like rock would. It's like Ryan said, free resource. It's kind of a symbiotic relationship because this guy that's in the town right by us said, they're a waste product for him. So this is kind of a great opportunity for him to come dump these. It's a natural resource. It'll start decaying in the soil. If we ever need to till it under, there's no problem. It doesn't have to be removed. It can just be left in the ground.
Yeah.
So this offers a lot of really good benefit for us. And I think it's going to work out really well.
We thought, well, maybe long term we'll put gravel in some of these areas, and the reason that we didn't do that right now was just because, one, it costs money and this was free, but two, we have some things that possibly needed to go through here as far as utilities and all that, so why put gravel down and then have to tear it all up?
And I wish we had smell-o-vision, because the smell from these chips is really good. It's very fresh. So
Yep, so then I guess we come to our first delivery out to the property, which was quite the adventure, just very similar to the adventure of delivering our shipping container, because as soon as these guys get out here, they see our driveway and they see that bridge and they say, oh, I I'm not going to be able to come across that. And we said, no, it's fine, you can. But this one had 56-foot long trusses on the end of it, and the guy needed to back it into our driveway and all the way up the hill.
When he got back out on the road after he had delivered the load, he got out of his truck and he ran his hands through his hair and he said that was stressful.
Yeah.
So kudos to him. He did a great job.
Yep.
We are grateful. We're grateful they're here, and we're grateful that it only had to come once.
Yeah. So the unfortunate part about that was that this was really the first major delivery onto our beautiful driveway, and it did happen to be pretty wet when he came in here. Of course, you can't really decide these things and say, oh no, you can't come today. It's like it was coming.
It's like it's coming, and it's going to be there in 2 hours.
So they had to back that up there, and you know, he got off of the driveway and onto the driveway here and there. So there are some large spots where definitely things sunk in. This is a large load, a huge semi that came in. And so that is something that I worked on a bit the last couple of days, was trying to smooth that back out as much as I could. It still needs work. And over time, I think after all this traffic happens, obviously when we put in the driveway, we also knew this isn't the absolute, end driveway thing, but it is hard to watch all of that hard work and beautiful, smooth driveway for someone like me just be kind of smashed down in one time of driving on it.
But now you look at it, I mean, as I sit here and I look at it, where we are driving consistently, it is nice and packed down. It is very smooth for the most part. I mean, it's going to need some work and an extra layer, but this really... this construction traffic is actually going to be really good for packing this down and making that limestone kind of crush together, really form a cement kind of like material. So that'll be good.
So we'll need more material on it yet. When that's going to happen, I don't know. We may wait as long as we can until some cement trucks drive on it and other stuff first, but we'll see. In the end, it will need some more work, but we knew that.
Right.
So I was just talking about the importance of those wood chips. Well, look at this. Where we don't have wood chips, that's the mess. So now we're standing down near the camp area, and it was a couple weekends ago, we rented a machine again and came through, and I did roughly 14 hours in the machine in a weekend, cleaning out a bunch of old brush, cutting down some of the nastiest trees. We're going to utilize some of those trees, at least the trunk portion, if any of them are straight, or obviously for firewood if there's good stuff there to use for firewood too. But so any of this stuff back here that was old berries, all of that stuff was 8 feet tall in some spots, and it's not like we can go in and pick off of that really. No. It's a lot of dead material. So what we're going to do is get rid of that, and then we'll see what comes back and figure out which areas we want to keep of the berries, which areas we don't, and deal with it at that point. So.
Right. The root zone of those berries is perennial. So even if the top gets cut off, unless it gets consistently cut off and not allowed to grow, they'll come back. So it needed to happen, even though we do want to salvage some of those areas of berries. It was nearly impossible to get into them. Have no idea how many years of dead wood was in there. So this was a rejuvenating thing for this area and for all the woodlands that he was able to get to with that brush cutter.
Yep. And same thing out in the woods. I mean, there was a lot of berries out into there too, not something that we could actually even walk through. So we wanted to be able to see what trees are actually out there, what trees do we want to keep, which ones are dead or need to go. And there was no way to get to any of those sections without cutting this down. So that's going to be an ongoing process. I told Kels I'm pretty sure that I will be back in the fall in the machine again, doing probably the same thing, but it actually is a lot of fun.
I was going to say, don't let him tell you that's a chore. He enjoys that.
Yeah, so it is fun. So I do have some video of that. We'll see what all came out of it. I haven't actually looked through all of that footage to see what I have, but I'll probably come out with a video on the brush cutting part if there's something interesting there.
This is one area that we left for manual cleanup because I wanted to be able to harvest, if I could, off of some of the blackberries. So there is dead wood in here. Ryan created rows with the brush cutter when he came through, so at least I have access to both sides of it. Before then, this was completely covered, so you could only get to the perimeter, and now we can get to a lot of this. Still a lot of cleanup. Blackberries will flower on first-year canes, but fruit on second-year canes. So we'll have to come in and get rid of some of this dead wood and leave everything alone that's blooming to see if we get any fruit this year.
You can see how much more open everything is. The grass is going to be allowed to come back, and lots of stuff to clean up in here as far as old trees and stuff that got cut down, but looks so much better. So right here we're standing on Berry Lane. We widened out the actual path because they were starting to encroach on that again, and then also, like I said, I cut some of these into rows. There's not a ton of them. There's a huge brush pile right over in here that has a bunch of berries in there, but there's a lot of old wood buried in there, and I could not get through it with the machine. Right there is the trail through that swampy area. We're standing up on top of the hill, but this should give you a pretty good sense of how steep it is going down the hill. Pretty decent slopes here going down to a few different areas. And you thought Iowa was nothing but flat land. Well, not true. I would say the building stuff should start within the next month or so, hopefully, but that's going to be weather permitting, and we've been getting a lot of rain, so we'll see what happens. I want to thank you so much for watching today, and we'll see you next time.